We are live all over the place, all over the planet.
Literally.
Literally.
I mean, we talk about, I don't know, some listener we have in Mongolia, and
Philippines.
they're everywhere, which
I love it.
sometimes like blows my mind. But how super cool is it that we live in this day and age where, yeah, it's the world is so small, so
The
small.
world is so small. And that's just this dimension. You know what I mean? Like, we got lots of listeners everywhere.
Yes, like our last show, we were talking about all of our deceased loved ones that we know are listening in. So that's pretty cool too.
I'm going to say we're in the top 1% of podcasts outside of this realm of existence. Thank you.
Ooh.
I'm in full flow. I accept all the love from all the channels.
Oh, well, it's good that you are, because not everybody is. And this, receiving love, it comes up here all the time, because if you're gonna heal, you got to be with love. And again, I need to make up a different word for love, because when you say love, everybody like goes to romance, and love isn't just romance. This English language, it's not working in the love realm. Like we need some change, but that's a whole different concept topic. But when you want more love in your life, you have to like receive it when it comes. And
Right.
it comes in so many different size, shapes, and forms. And again, not talking about people in romance, but even if it is romance that you want, that kind of love that you want to attract into your life, you also have to receive the other forms of love that are, and I used to be a huge, um, you know, I didn't do this well. Like, I'd go to the store and someone would want to open the door for me, and I'd be like, no, I got it. Uh, someone gives you a compliment, and it's like, like I don't need that compliment. Like, receive and say thank you, and the more that you receive, the more that will come. But when you say no to those things, you're telling the universe that you don't really want it.
Absolutely. To me, I think as far as how the universe works, it's like a little or a lot, I don't think is part of the equation, right? Like when you talk about receiving is receiving. It could be receiving a little or receiving a lot, and a little or a lot of whatever it is isn't necessarily good or bad, right? It's what you put on it. But I'm sure you've heard this analogy with money. Like, you keep asking the universe for money, and you're so focused on trying to, let's say, get a bigger paycheck or get a raise, but in the meantime the universe has been dropping $1, $2, a penny, a something, right? And each time you reject, oh, I'm not going to pick up a penny, I'm not going to pick up a quarter, like, what's happening to the flow, right? You're jamming up the signal. Like, it's starting to rev up, right? Like the clog is finally starting to release and go through, but you keep blocking it. Accept it, receive it, take it. If you don't need a penny, you don't need $1, and you don't want to have it, give it away. Keep the flow going, right? What goes in goes out. Keep that abundance, and the same thing with love. Because I think you're right, common courtesy is a version of love. Kindness is a version of love. Affection is a version of love. Like, literally opening up your door and listening to someone, or it doesn't have to be like how people are in the Starbucks line and they buy the one for the person behind them, and then it can be a lot of different ways, right? You listening to me rattle on for an entire show, that's love.
Well, and then it also like made me think of the 5 love languages, and we all have our preferred love language, like how we like to receive love, but people don't always give in your preferred language. And so there's the, like, when you're in relationship with someone, whether that be a friendship or family or or lover, like, yes, you get to teach them how to speak your love language, but also when they give you love in a different love language, still acknowledge it and receive it, because it's still love, even if it's not,
Right?
even if it's not your preferred method of getting it. Just like you said with money, like, yeah, I'd prefer to find $100 bill on the floor, but if there's the penny, I'm going to pick up the penny too, to show the universe, yes, I want more of this. And it's the same thing with love. Like, receive what you get, and it'll get fine-tuned down the road into being more of what you want, but you have to show the universe that yes, you say you want it, and you get to receive it when it comes.
This is it. That's staying in flow. And can you imagine, like, universally, right? Like the clog on the other side, if like someone is trying to do something nice for you and you don't find value in it, and you're like, that means nothing to me. Like, if I'm that other person, I'm going to be like, oh my God, but I bent over backwards. Like, here I am giving and giving and giving. And it's like, oh, but I didn't want that. Well, I don't know. Would you keep, so it's, yeah, keep the flow going. And don't forget that you can give it to yourself too. Like that, the practice has to start with you. The more you want to receive from the world, the more you have to give it to yourself. Show the universe what it is that you want from the world. We had a previous guest that talked about taking herself out on dates, and she set the bar, right? This is what I'm like to date myself. Now, if you want to date me, you got to do better than what I got to do for myself, what I do for myself, right? So like, keep that universal flow going. Know what you want. Know what feels good to you. And I mean that in every sense of that statement, because that's a loaded one. Thank you for coming. And yeah, I just think it's really important. But that leads me to our guest, who I am absolutely in love with. I'm like her biggest fan. Can we bring her on?
Oh, biggest fan. Biggest fan.
Well, I'm everybody. I love everybody. Candis, welcome to the show. TheSlowYear.com. I want to hear all about it. Just start off with a nice, juicy intro. Tell everybody who you are and tell us what you are most passionate about.
Oh, well, hi. Yeah, so I'm Candis, and about a couple of years ago, I just had this moment where I was out on date night with my husband, my then husband, and just thought I looked really great that night, and I was feeling great, and just, thought the world of myself. And I remember standing outside of the restaurant after dinner, and we asked this passerby to take a picture of us. And when she took the picture and she handed back the camera, I remember thinking, like, being shocked by what I saw. Like, this representation that I was seeing it was like I didn't even recognize myself. And I remember getting in the car and like bursting into tears. And my husband was like, what is happening here? Like, crying over pictures is not like my usual, MO. And it was just that at that time I was feeling super frantic. Like, there was a lot going on in my life, and I was overwhelmed. I was hustling for this business that felt really misaligned with who I wanted to be. I was having relationship issues. I was not prioritizing my health. And so my internal state had really like manifested in the physical. And I decided that I needed to slow down, but I was so overwhelmed that I couldn't do anything about it. And then fast forward to the end of 2021, I realized all these years had gone past and I was still stuck in the exact same place. And so I embarked on a year that I dubbed the slow year. And it was exactly what it sounds like. It was this commitment to transform my life by accessing the power of slow and understanding that at that point, I believed that it was the precursor to change. And so in terms of what I'm most passionate about, I just living life really well. I think living life really well is what I'm most passionate about.
That's so beautiful. I have to tell you, the first time you came across my feed and I heard the slow year, I think my very first feeling was probably anxiety. Like, what do you mean slow down? What do you mean? What does that even mean? Like, and then I thought, okay, well, maybe it means just like enjoying things. And then I'm watching you create a whole life around slowing down. And, you know, we talk a lot about wanting to do a million things all at the same time. We just spoke in one of our previous episodes about feeling guilty when you rest, you know. So how did you get rid of that feeling that you always have to be doing something? And I don't know, maybe you are always doing something and now you're just doing it slowly. So tell us a little bit more about how your limiting beliefs had you stuck and how you found the freedom that you have today.
Well, I think in terms of how limiting beliefs kept me stuck, I think at that point there was a large fear, as I feel like most people have, around, well, how am I going to take care of myself? Am I going to not reach my full potential if I slow down? Am I going to be able to pay the bills if I slow down? There was all of these things that were kind of, you know, in my system that were causing me to stay in that state of frantic energy. And I think the first thing that I had to do, I talk about kind of these principles that really emerged for me through the year. And the first three principles are permission, preparation, and trust. And the first one was just like saying to myself, like, Candis, do you have permission just to take it easy? For like, what would it mean if you were no longer chasing your dreams per se? Or like, what would it look like if you weren't at this boss babe, or like this that everyone currently perceives you to be? Or like, what would it feel like if you were to remove those layers? Like if you just gave yourself permission to do that as a starting point. And so I kind of spent this time playing around with this idea of permission. And what does it say about me if I were to slow down? What are people going to think? Do I care that much? Like, what are the payoffs? So there was this big piece kind of around permission for me. And then there was kind of this understanding of like, well, if I'm going to do this, then I need to really be prepared. Like I need to really be on top of my money. I need to understand where it's coming, where it's going. I need to declutter my physical, my energetic, my emotional space. And then the biggest thing, and I think that this is probably, I believe very strongly in the power of the spoken word. And, you know, you've both mentioned kind of the universe and allowing and all of that. And I think that a lot of the times we get scared about this idea of slowing down because what we actually lack is faith. And so the third principle is around trust. What does it mean to trust that there is a power that is bigger than you, that is always here to support you, that's here to guide you? What does it mean to trust that you're supported by the various people in your life? And so I think that these were, and the 13 principles kind of emerged for me, but these three were really like the starting point for it all. You know, I have to give myself permission. I have to get prepared, and I have to really exercise this faith that no matter what that I can slow down and I will still be supported.
I love that. I really firmly believe, and every time I get like a little anxiety or whatever, the universe conspires in my favor. And you have to trust. So sometimes things look really shitty, but in the end, it's leading you to where you need to go. And if the universe is telling you to slow down, trust that that is the right message for you, and it's going to lead me somewhere good.
Well, and slowing down has created opportunities for you, right? That you might not have come across had you not slowed down.
Yeah, look, I feel so passionately about this work that I'm currently doing, but also just about the year itself, because for me, it was a deeply transformative season. It's something that I speak about with so much enthusiasm and passion, because my life actually looks nothing like it did at the end of 2021 when I decided that I was going to take 2022 to do this. By the end of last year, I realized that so much of my life had changed. I felt a renewed sense of purpose in my work. I felt a reconnection with the principles of my upbringing, because a lot of the principles that emerged for me was almost a return to my upbringing. You know, we grew up, Fridays in my house was preparation day, where mum would kind of like prepare the house, and she'd grocery shop and cook and all those things in preparation for Saturday, because Saturday was our day of sacred rest. And it was a day that was just dedicated to rest, which was a big deal, right? I was really thinking about this morning. My dad was born in 1935. They were sharecroppers. So in the US, in Mississippi, as a sharecropper. And, which, essentially a lot of people has coined that as like this modern day slavery, different form of slavery. And so my dad, a black man born in the 30s, goes to Australia and reimagines the way that he does life. And one of the guiding principles of his life from 50 onward was this right to rest, and almost like rest as resistance. And so for me, I had the benefits of being able to experience that throughout my life, but I had lost sight of it. So much of the year for me was actually this return to my roots. And the beginning of the year started with me going home to Australia, spending time with my family, going back to my childhood home, and really, really just like resting in these principles and the things of my upbringing. But I went through the year and so much had changed. And then come December, I realized that despite all of these changes, I was still leaking energy in one specific area of my life, and that was in my relationships. And specifically, I was leaking energy in my marriage. And I knew that I could not end the year in full integrity, claiming that it was a time of deep transformation without addressing this part. And so I had a really honest and raw conversation with my then husband, and we actually made the decision to divorce. And so by January of this year, I was sitting in another place of like, okay, it's time to transition out of my home and into this next season of life. And I really don't know how I'm going to do this. I feel like I'm in a transitional period. I'm not really doing a lot of, my background is kind of in personal brand and marketing consulting, and done that for a few different companies, as well as my own business. But I was in this transitional phase because I realized that this work was really important to me. And so I said, I don't really know. I've been married since I was 22. I'm 35 now. And I thought, I don't know how I'm going to do this. I don't know how I'm going to take care of myself. I don't know like what this is going to become for me. I don't know how I'm going to move out and do this next thing. And I was sitting down and I was doing my devotion, which is like the fourth principle of the slow year. And I really felt like the voice of God or intuition or universe, or however you want to say it, saying, it's safe for you to let go. It's safe for you to let go. And so I told my then husband, I said, hey, I'm going to move out by this date, which was a couple of weeks later. And I really had no idea how I was going to do it. I had no idea where I was going to go. I actually didn't even know how I was going to be resourced to do it, because I don't know if you know the rents in Florida right now. Trying to move apartments is like a $10,000 extravaganza, Yeah. 3 days after I told him that I was going to leave, I got a call from my agent, an agent who I haven't spoken with in about 5 years, who we haven't booked work with. And she calls me out of the blue. I'm like looking at I wonder what Tammy wants. And she calls me and she says, Candis, you've been shortlisted for a role hosting a travel show with Carnival, the Cruise Line. And a couple of days after that, she called me back and she said, they want you for the job. You're flying to Mexico. You're flying out to Mexico on this date. And it's a 5-figure job, and like, have fun. And I just thought, this is the power. For me, it was like to slow down, to give myself the space, the grace, to trust, to be open to surrender my life to a power greater than me, and to fully lean into the idea that when I do so, that I'm supported beyond my imagination. This was like a dream that I didn't even necessarily know I had. I'd been on TV like many years ago, but I hadn't done this type of work in about 7 years. And now I have this beautiful opportunity. I'm actually flying to the Bahamas next week to film the next episode. But just this, and I don't know where it's going to go. I don't know if the Bahamas is like the last thing I ever shoot with them. I don't know. But this is the power of what happens when we slow down and we give ourselves, our ideas over, and we give like, it's where the juiciness of life lies.
Honestly, you use the word juicy, like those are your words. Like, I am so incredibly happy and just buoyed by your story. Like, it's like Julietta said, like the universe was conspiring in your favor without you even realizing it. All you had to do was be in your own flow. I really do think of you all the time.
Oh,
I'm beyond. It's just, you are the living example of what happens when you respect yourself and when you're in the flow. It's incredible.
yeah. Yeah. Well, I appreciate that. Yeah. It's been a beautiful journey.
Well, and I love you sharing the not so pretty parts of it as well, because there is the glamour side of it, getting the TV role and all of this, but there's the not so pretty parts that are there for all of us as well. And just knowing that even when those not so pretty parts show up, it's okay. It's just part of the process. It's part of the journey that we have to go through. And yeah, you do get to trust.
Yeah. And I mean, I think you said something really important there is, someone said to me recently, well, what's the downsides of slowing down? Because there's two sides to every coin, right? And I think that the downsides can be that when we give ourselves space, sometimes we're going to see things that we don't necessarily want to see. Sometimes we're going to have to accept things that we don't really want to accept. And I think that can be really hard for people. We keep ourselves distracted because we don't want to look at the truth of what's happening in our relationships, or we distract ourselves from the fact that we're unhappy in our bodies, or we're unhappy with our work. And when you slow down, sometimes you're faced with the hard truths. And that's certainly something that happened for me. It was just being faced with the hard truth and then asking myself, if I'm committed to living really well and really in a happy, joyful, legendary type of way, then what am I willing to let go of? What am I willing to surrender?
It's such a powerful point that you're making, because I have found that in my life, when I realize that I'm unhappy, I realize that I've actually been unhappy for a long time. And it's exactly what you said. It's distraction. I think one of the most powerful things we can realize is that living happily and joyfully takes deliberate intention. I know I have spent a lot of time in my life waiting for happiness to rain down on me. And in the end, like you said, I was just distracted. But when I focus and when I say, wait a minute, what was it? I always laugh that I spent 20 years in the legal field and I didn't even mean to. That's not my degree. That's not what I wanted to do. When I was 15, guess what? I wanted to be a photographer. And I only launched my photography company 10 years ago. I'm 49, right? What happened to those 20 years? Well, I was distracted. I wasn't living intentionally. I wasn't making deliberate choices on where to spend my time and what I was doing. So thank you for pointing that out.
Yeah, of course.
Go ahead.
Juliet, I always feel like I talk too much, so I try and let Juliet. So one of the things that we're both very passionate about is books and reading, and because this podcast can only be so long, so we try and always ask, what is one book that you would add to our goddess library? And everybody stresses out over one. So if you have a lot to share, you can share.
Maybe I'll share the most recent one that I've read. The Wild Woman's Way, I think, is a beautiful book. Just a very holistic approach to femininity and health and our relationships and all of that, and how we can be more in our bodies. So I love The Wild Woman's Way. Great book.
And because it also speaks, you said, being in your body. And I do think we all escape into our heads all the time, and part of that busyness that we're talking about. And you can only be in your body if you slow down.
Absolutely.
And
It's quite interesting. Well, it's not interesting. It's fun. In this second year, as I'm kind of deepening into the practices and the principles of the slow year and continuing to apply them all in my life, this year has been all about pleasure and sensuality and sexuality. And I've been working with a tantric coach and have really been focusing even more deeply on my on embodiment. And it is a whole it's a whole other exploration. And you really do. To be in your body, you're right. You have to slow down. You have to create space. You have to be intentional about it. But when you do, you start to experience and interact and engage with life and other people in a whole different way. And something that for years I've also been in my head. And to be in my body now, took up bachata lessons, been out dancing and, in my living room, out in the streets. And
did you try belly dancing yet?
I haven't tried belly dancing, but Michaela Boehm in The Wild Woman's Way, she talks about the fact that as women, our creative power lives in our hips. And so that's one of the things one of the reasons why I've been doing bachata as well. And she does her nonlinear movement method. But yeah, belly dancing seems like it would be a perfect.
It reminds me, as you're talking about movement, it reminds me of that. I've only taken like one or two, classes here and there, but just releasing and allowing your body to do all the things that it's intended to do is just so freeing. And focusing your attention in your creative center, right? Mm-hmm. We're powerful beyond imagination.
Yeah, couldn't agree more. And we don't even know it half the time.
Or we're too busy keeping ourselves distracted from that.
Yes.
And if we slow down, we could actually tap into that.
Yes.
And it's talking too about, as women, we are creators. Like that's what we do. And some of us create other human beings. We give birth to children, but that whole power of creativity that is in our pelvis, like it's not just about creating more humans, but creating everything that we have this potential to do. And I do think that too often we're in our heads, we are too busy. And if you slow down and like tapped into that, tuned in, what we could create would change the world.
Mm-hmm. Indeed. Yeah, good plug. Good plug for slowing down.
Well, sure. If think about it, if everyone were in alignment with themselves, if everyone were just happy with themselves, then where would conflict be? There wouldn't be conflict because we'd all be aligned. We'd all be just in flow, right? Mm-hmm. So how are you working with clients? How do you even begin to tackle, talking to someone who's distracted and teaching them to slow down?
Well, I guess the first part is, going back to those principles, it's like, do you really want to slow down? I think that so often people say, well, I wish I could do that. I really want to do that. But they're so tied to the story of busyness. And they're so tied to like all the reasons why they can't do it. And it's impossible to create any type of change in our lives if we don't even believe it's really possible for us. And so a large part of it is just, firstly, understanding what you truly desire, and then starting to challenge some of those beliefs. And not only challenging those beliefs, but kind of beginning to speak it. I remember years ago, I stopped saying I was busy. My mother called me one night and it was about 8 o'clock at night. I'd been working since 4 a.m. And mum called and she said, oh, Candis, what are you doing? I said, I'm just working. I was like on my laptop. And she said, and at that time, I remember my eyes were bloodshot. My voice was croaky. I was in this constant state of I was very frantic around money at the time. I was in a separation from my husband at the time and I was living on my own and, new to Miami Beach and just working ridiculous hours. And she said to me, oh, you're just so busy. you're so busy all the time. But she kind of said it with this reverence, because my parents also lived quite a slow life, you know. Growing up, they raised us in quite a slow, connected, intentional way with community and all of that. We lived at the base of the Korean Mountain in the, Sunshine Coast, the Aussie hinterland. And so they raised us in this very way. And for me to move away from that was something that was quite different to what they raised us with, you know, and that was when I moved to America. And so she says, you're so busy, but she kind of said it with a little bit of reverence. And I remember feeling like deep in my spirit, like, oh, I didn't like that. And I broke up with the word busy that night. And even though I still at times felt that way, I felt that frantic energy, I stopped saying that I was busy many years before I started feeling busy. Because I decided, you know what, I don't want to be busy. People would say, oh, how are you? You know, and I would, you know, people have said to me before, oh, Candis, you're so busy. I say, never that. You know, I don't have a relationship. I try not to have a relationship with it. If I have a lot going on, I might say I'm full, like my day's full. Right. But I think the energy in which we speak about things matters.
So many people wear busy like it's a badge of honor. And they also like to use it as an excuse for everything. And so I've already a long time ago said should is eliminated from the dictionary. Busy might be a good word to also remove from the dictionary.
Yeah. Well, think of some alternatives that that put you more in the energy that feels good to you. Yeah. For me, yes, for example, like, I've got some things going on right now, but I would never describe my life as busy, because I don't like the energy of that. It makes me feel, it feels constricting, versus something like my life is full and rich or whatever, that there is still room for spaciousness in that.
And I think removing the word busy, creates ownership of what's happening in your day, right? Because busy is something that happens to you. Oh, I'm so busy, right? This is happening to me. But I think removing that gives you ownership in it, right? You know, you mentioned divorce. I divorced my high school sweetheart when I was 29. And I remember the moment when I decided that I needed to get divorced, because it never occurred to me that divorce was even an option. Like I made a promise and all this stuff, and, you know, we were unhappy, but I was like, no, this is what we're supposed to be doing. And I remember my therapist looked at me and she goes, you don't have to leave. You could stay in this, and you could easily reach, 90 years old. And you could still be in this marriage. And when she said that, I was like, oh shit, she's right. Like, if I'm not careful, I will end up 90 years old. I will end up in the wrong relationship for all of my life. Right. And when you talk about being busy, I feel the same way about that. Like, light bulb moment, like, hey, you can stay busy for the rest of your life. You can be at the affect of everything if you don't make a decision. And that's it, really. It's just a decision. Just make the decision that it's something else, right?
Yeah, that's a great way to put it. And I love the way that you kind of describe busyness as being something that's applied to us. Yeah, because it's like the circumstances aren't. I am busy, and so changing the way that we view that. Yeah.
And the truth is, like, if you you get hit by a bus today, you're going to cease being busy. Like, right? Like, if something happens to you, my one friend, when she would talk to me about my business, she goes, pretend that your business, is like you're a terminally ill, something, or, family member. She's like, wouldn't you just stop being busy to focus on your family member? So focus on your business or focus on whatever. Like, busy is a construct, right? We're just making it up. I don't know who made up all this stuff, but really down with that.
Yeah.
We get to make up something new.
Yes.
Well, it's been awesome having you on the show, Candis. I'm wondering if there's any little tidbit left, like a nice juicy golden nugget to leave our audience with.
Surrender. This is what's coming to me, like if you're in a place in your life where you feel like you feel stuck, or you feel overwhelmed, or you're being faced with a decision and you're not sure what the right answer is, I think that surrender is a really great starting point. And surrender just says, like, I am open to receiving guidance, and I'm willing to give myself the space necessary to hear that guidance come through. And so I think my, it was one of the final lessons of the slow year for me. And it was the one that it's the one that kind of ended up changing everything. And so surrender.
Beautiful.
And, yeah.
You're a poetess. Thank you so much for being here. Thank you so much for sharing your story and so much of yourself. We could absolutely make this into a 3-hour episode and carry on. But thank you. Thank you for spending time with us.
It's my pleasure. And thank you so much for having me. I really appreciate both of your energy and your insights. It's a beautiful podcast.
I hope our audience has like absorbed some of the slowness and the power in that. And I was laughing a little bit during this episode because Graciela always talks about how, I sit there and pause and wait and I'm too slow with my talking. And I'm like, maybe this episode will rub off on her and allow her to experience the slowness of communication.
It's all a process. It's all a process.
It is. All right. Thank you again so much for joining us. And thank you to our audience for listening. And I want to wish you all a very magical day.
A slow